Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful. We had a nice lunch yesterday, a business lunch at the top of the Movenpick, Nairobi, which has this restaurant that rotates, and it's on the 24th floor. So see if you can spot the Nairobi landmarks from this view. The restaurant's called The View. Macro thoughts. This is a chart of the Bunds price from Pinecone Macro. The point he's making in that chart is that it's right at a key level, and if it breaks through that level, you could see quite a sharp move. I appreciate we're in September 2018, and I wrote this in September 2016, which was predicting what Pinecone Macro seems to be alerting us to. Mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. I said if volatility spikes, positions are going to be reduced en masse, or to put it another way and to borrow the lyrics from the Eagles' Hotel California, mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. And she said, we are all just prisoners here of our own device. Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Relax, said the nightman. We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. And I said then, which was admittedly 2 years ago, but and I'll come to the point. What is clear, I said then, is we're at the fag end of this party, and that fag end took 2 whole years. And then to the point about volatility and about prices, look at this is the US 10-year yield, which has climbed above the important 3% threshold. And I was repeating my thinking over the weekend in a piece I wrote called A Decade After Lehman. And I was describing the markets having been like a patient etherized upon a table by these huge doses of free money. And I said it lasted a whole decade. And then I was saying that since the beginning of 2018, the US has been reducing its balance sheet, reducing the amount of dollars, and also increasing the interest rate on those dollars. The dollar, which had appeared like a toy gun firing blanks, suddenly metasized into an AK-47. The worry is what happens if it metasizes even further. I think the dollar is seriously weaponized, the US economy is blowing hot, the risk is that US interest rates will go higher than the market is currently predicting. Punch-drunk markets, India, Turkey, South Africa, here even need to sober up fast. And I also said, hyperbolic and populist responses are inversely correlated to the state of the real economy. People get more hyperbolic as the economy craters. And note Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela and President Erdogan. And to that point, have a look at those 10-year US Treasury yields are now at 3.06%. Michael Jordan tweeted, tariffs equals higher prices equals inflation equals higher interest rates, slower growth, stronger dollar, and lower asset values, which sums it up. And I was also saying, look, there are no more quaaludes, and policymakers will no longer be able to pop them. In prescribed doses, Quaaludes promotes relaxation, sleepiness, and sometimes a feeling of euphoria. It causes a drop in blood pressure and slows the pulse rate. These properties are the reason why it was initially thought to be a useful sedative. It became a recreational drug due to its euphoric effect. Home thoughts, a timeless past time. Chase the sunsets in the wild. That photograph is by the Fairmont Mara, and I've been there several times, and I've surely told you about it. It's very beautiful. It's on a bend in the river. Used to be owned by Tiny Roland many years ago. And everyone flocks to the Mara, which is amazing because there's so much in there. But there's so much just on the periphery, like where this is. I prefer to find these things on my own and experience the sunrise and sunset by myself or with the children or with the wife. I don't want to be there with 20 other cars. Therefore, it really is worth a visit. It got voted to be one of the best places to visit by, I think it was Vanity Fair or somebody, and deservedly. In the daytime, you felt that you had got high up, near to the sun. But the early mornings and evenings were limpid and restful, and the nights were cold. And that is from Karen Blixen, describing those hills that you're seeing in this photograph, which are the Gong Hills, and she had a farm just there. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. This is a Mexican proverb. I thought it was powerful. I had been reading another book about a fellow of Mexican extraction who worked at the border for the US Border Patrol. And it's an extraordinary book as well. Dessert, this was the dessert yesterday that I enjoyed, with a view, at the view, on the 24th floor of the Movenpick, Nairobi. I like this photograph, a little glimpse of Vargas, the highest point of the Lenkikio Hills in northern Kenya. Just started to discover northern Kenya lately. It's quite extraordinary. I'm reading Colin Thubron's Shadow of the Silk Road. Franco Pan, of course, wrote the iconic piece on this Silk Road. Well worth reading if you haven't already. A nation is bound not only by the real past, but the stories it tells itself, by what it remembers and what it forgets. Once, at the dreaming dawn of history, before the world was categorized and regulated by mortal minds, before solid boundaries formed between the mortal world and any other, fairies roamed freely among men, and the two races knew each other well. Yet the knowing was never straightforward, and the adventures that mortals and fairies had together were fraught with uncertainty, for fairies and humans were alien to each other. Colin Thubron. Political reflections. The President of France, Emmanuel Macron, received the Aga Khan at the Élysée Palace yesterday. They both looked as if they were happy to see each other. President Moon and Kim Jong-un signed a joint agreement. Take a look at this video. The sister, sort of, and President Moon, they kind of can't avoid each other. Here are some details of what North and South Korea agreed on during the Pyongyang talks, which seem to have gone extremely well from all the body language and press that I'm seeing. Sergei Shoigu stated that the blame for the downed Russian plane and the death of the crew lies entirely on the Israeli side. Then Putin gave everyone a pass, which he's prone to do, and despite at some point he's got to put up or shut up. We keep shutting up. With the submarine, Japan sends a message in the South China Sea. Japanese submarine participated in war games in the South China Sea last week and is now visiting Vietnam, signaling a more assertive pushback by Japan against China's territorial claims in the region. Japan took the unusual step on Monday of announcing that it had carried out the drills, which also involved 2 destroyers and a helicopter carrier. The Ministry of Defense said the exercises were not targeting a particular nation, but analysts said they were an unequivocal message to China. We're sending a signal that China cannot do whatever it wants to do and get away with it. That's Narushige Mishishita, Director of the Security and International Studies Program at the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies in Tokyo. The drills were the first involving a submarine that Japan is known to have conducted in the South China Sea. Neither the Defense Ministry nor the Asahi Shimbun, which broke the news before the announcement, said where in the sea they'd been carried out. I think it's a very good example of the complexities in the relationship right now. Japan and China are interdependent and do have a lot to gain from each other, but at the same time, there's some real issues and tensions, she said. In the past, Japan regarded other countries as either a friend or an enemy, but that's not reality. Japan has finally matured, shaking hands with its right hand while holding up a fist with its left. That was unthinkable 20 years ago. When Abe Shinzo was here for TCAD, and I attended his presentation, and I quoted him verbatim, he said this: Japan bears the responsibility of fostering the confluence of the Pacific and the Indian Oceans. International markets, Trump fired another volley of the US-China trade war. Sino-US relations have reached their worst moment in 40 years, Mr. Liu added. We don't know if Trump has a plan B to get out of the quagmire. Now, I just thought we were going to be in this endless cycle of escalation. But yesterday, I interviewed Charlie Robertson, who's the chief economist at Renaissance Capital, and a friend. And he made this interesting point. He said, look, what's going to happen is Trump has got to take something just before the midterms, he's going to declare victory, and then boom, and then we're going to get, according to Charlie, a really big emerging market rebound on that news for a few months, and then we go back to the trade war. And I think that looks the most likely prognosis I've heard, and it made me think as well. So thank you, Charlie, but it was a great interview. We're going to publish it later today. He said that he had a lot to say because, of course, he looks at this emerging market frontier universe. Beijing said it would retaliate with tariffs against $60 billion worth of American products after Trump on Monday imposed 10% on about $200 billion worth of imports from China. But listen to this. In July, Beijing launched a short video in English featuring a talking cartoon soybean, vouching for the importance of trade. The cartoon points out that 9 of the top 10 soybean growing states voted for Trump in the 2016 presidential election. So, will voters there turn out to support Trump and the Republicans once they get it in the pocketbooks, asks the Bean. 9th of July, in that piece about tariff wars, I also said the Chinese government has been quite surgical in its response and is targeting the farm economy in particular. And have a look at this chart from Peter Brandt. And if you really want to know a proxy for the targeting of the farm economy, it's soybeans. Current target in soybeans is $7.64. And now, Peter, in his latest tweet, is talking about a 45-year low being the objective. Here's the scale of China's response to Trump's tariffs. That's from David Inglis. The US exports $12.7 billion of goods to China every month. Taking into account the effect of an announced retaliatory tariffs from Beijing, that would cover roughly 75% of all American exports to China. But this is an interesting point I came across on Bloomberg. China's grip on rare earths may have proven too strong for Trump. Minerals no longer in list of Chinese goods targeted by the US. China supplied 78% of America's rare earth imports last year. My piece on the 9th of July was all about who blinks first, tariff wars. I was using the example of rebel without a cause, and in that, these 2 teenage boys play a game called Chicky, where they get in a car and drive towards a cliff, and the person who jumps first is the loser. And I was writing in that article that Trump has challenged Xi Jinping to such a contest. There will be great and fast economic retaliation against China if our farmers, ranchers and or industrial workers are targeted, he said, Trump. In my view, his aggressive foreign economic policy is the signature success of this administration. It is highly effective. Trump can keep it up. It is working a treat. Going back to the piece I wrote over the weekend, I wrote that bubbles are bursting just about everywhere. I was referencing, the cryptocurrency markets, the African Eurobond markets. and saying these markets trade continuously. Essentially, these markets are a continuous scorecard on the credit worthiness of the issuer. It's a relatively recent phenomenon and something many policymakers will not have considered adequately, in my view. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar not really being able to make much headway. 116.77. Dollar index 94.57. Japanese yen 112.35. Swiss franc 0.9637. The pound 131.56. The pound has made a lot of headway. Not worried about anything else, it seems. Aussie 0.7243. India rupee 72.625. Record low was around 73. South Korean won 11.2202, the Rial 4.1603, the Egyptian pound 17.9105, and the Rand stronger 14.9041. Dollar index, I've adjusted my stop to 93.80, but I'm cognizant of what Charlie's saying. Euro dollar 116.78, we've been hanging around here for quite a while now. Tesla stock tanked after a report the company is facing a criminal probe over Elon Musk's going private tweet. It's surprising it's taken so long, frankly. Gold 1203.75, and that's done a lot of work moving up towards the higher end of the range. Brent crude oil has recaptured the breakout. My target remains $88. That's from T Commodity, and certainly looking bullish. Saudi Arabia says they're comfortable with Brent oil above $80 a barrel. That was yesterday. And then the main driver, I think, is really the sanctions on Iran. WTI crude oil is at $69.68. Let's move on to Sub-Saharan Africa. Agreement on peace, friendship, and comprehensive cooperation between the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the state of Eritrea. This was signed in Jeddah on the 16th of September 2018. Why in Jeddah is a mystery, but not really. It's obviously bankrolled by the king. And in the presence of King Salman and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And this is something I've written about. This is the dynamic geopolitical developments we're seeing in the Horn of Africa and near the Red Sea. New investigation, Maldives tourism isn't all swaying palm trees and white sand beaches. The truth is something far uglier. This is OCCRP in a hard-hitting report. They call themselves the Untouchables, and they committed their crimes in the clearest of tropical daylight behind the fist of an authoritarian government. It's quite a story of President Abdullah Yameen, how he leased scores of the country's idyllic islands to tourism developers via corrupt deals, while keeping tens of millions of dollars for themselves. It was an audacious theft, and everyone from local tycoons to international businesses got something out of it. Everyone, that is, except the Maldivian people. Burundi, over 200 killed in escalating brutality in Burundi. Security forces and youth aligned to the ruling party have allegedly killed more than 200 people in the past 5 months. Isn't bad thinking about it. Doesn't seem many are, actually. Zimbabwe secures a $250 million UK loan. Finance Minister lauds this as a show of confidence in the economy. Facility was extended by the GEMCOR, an independent investment management firm focused on emerging markets, which was established in 2014. The UK has suspended aid to Zambia amid corruption investigation. Fraud allegations, according to the High Commissioner, frozen all bilateral funding. Fergus Cochrane Diet. UKA takes zero tolerance approach to fraud and corruption. Zambia, of course, is trading at default levels of 16% on its dollar bond. But interestingly, Charlie is bullish about Zambia. When I publish that, we can have a look and listen. How emerging market turmoil is affecting central banks in Africa. South Africa's rand has lost 11% against the dollar since the start of August, pushing inflation expectations to a 3-month high. The Ghana cedi is on the slide. Nigeria's inflation rose for the first time in 19 months, big drop in reserves. and basically saying that the tide has now turned. Indeed it has. South African all-share down 5.25% this year. South African 10-year yields. Pine cone macro again posing the question, you tell me. Dollar versus rand. The rand has been strengthening below 14.90. This is expectation, I think, of a possible rate hike as early as this week. Egyptian pound 17.9105. Nigerian all-share down 15.33% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 8.04%. And of course, they were upgraded over the weekend. NASPA's shareholders receiving stock in the new company will be hoping MultiChoice can continue to find subscribers willing to pay $64.60 a month in South Africa as streamers such as Netflix target customers. I saw a valuation of $7 billion. I thought to myself, that's the biggest short of all time. Netflix has gained approval to operate throughout the continent in 2016 and charges 129 rand, plus the data costs, of course, to connect. MultiChoice has its own video streaming service, Showmax. The world is changing, it's becoming a lot more digital, indeed it is. That said, not everyone has broadband, so it will take a while for Netflix to catch up, not that long I don't think. In total, MultiChoice had 13.5 million subscribers as of the end of March, compared with 11.9 million from the previous year, generated revenue of 47.1 billion rand. In contrast, Netflix will probably have 500,000 African subscribers by 2020. I think that number is way understated. Vivo Energy PLC is on the lookout for further African acquisitions after adding more than 200 filling stations from Gabon to Mozambique. This is an all-share purchase of Engen Holdings for $204 million in cash and stock. This is what I found interesting. Vivo is looking to expand its non-fuel retail operations, such as convenience stores and fast food restaurants, a business that grew 22% last year. Kenya Treasury sees growth hitting a 7-year high. The imposition of VAT on fuel has triggered widespread fears that the economy is bound to deeply suffer. However, the government seems to hold a contrary view, with the National Treasury upgrading Kenya's economic growth projection for this year to 6% from 5.8% in June. Heavy rains in the second quarter of the year, and rains do have a big influence, and meteorology has a big impact. So that has been a boost. And the March 9 truce between Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, popularly known as the handshake, are likely to lift growth to 7-year high, the Treasury Secretary Henry Rotich has said. And I said, you think? The President's memorandum has been uploaded by the National Assembly Media Office, and this is what the President is proposing to replace the 800 basis points he's foregoing on VAT. He's recommending a revision of mobile phone transaction excise duty to 20% from 10%, bank transaction 20%, and phone internet costs 15%. The mood is so negative. In the past 12 years, and even in the depths of the election violence, people could see a horizon, but the mood now is a complete loss of faith. And 4 companies I'm speaking to are at a board level decision process to transfer to Rwanda and asking me to give an opinion on it. So it's quite unbelievable. Let me understand this. I will now pay 36 shillings to withdraw from an ATM and not the current 33. Interesting piece by Andrew Koribiko, who writes in the Oriental Review, Kenya's anti-Chinese migrant raid at CGTN was a deep state provocation, he says. Kenya raided the CGTN offices in the country last week and temporarily detained some of its workers on suspicion that they were illegal immigrants. The government later apologized and promised that it wouldn't happen again, but the incident was nevertheless very troubling because it came a little over a week after Kenyatta was hosted by Trump at the White House, and just days after the triennial forum on China-Africa cooperation that serves as the most important event in multilateral relations between China and Africa. Chinese-Kenyan relations are at an exceptional level, with Beijing loaning Nairobi over $1.5 billion to build the standard gauge railway, which essentially functions as the Silk Road centerpiece in the East African region's most stable economy, and was probably featured in Kenya's re-election campaign last year. As such, there's no reason why anyone in Kenya, much less the security services, wouldn't be aware of their country's strategic partnership with China, and had no idea how Beijing would interpret the targeting of its nationals, especially those working for its publicly funded international media outlet, and therefore obviously in the country legally. This leads one to consider whether the police operation was ordered by forces in the Kenyan military, intelligence and/or diplomatic bureaucracies, the deep state, opposed to Kenya's ties with China and interested in damaging them by sowing the seeds of distrust and discord between the two countries. It shouldn't be forgotten that this took place the same week that China hosted dozens of African leaders in roughly 2 weeks after Kenyatta's trip to Washington, thus throwing its timing into question and suggesting that this was indeed a pre-planned provocation unleashed for the aforementioned political reasons. The thing is missing here is that the Chinese turned down the funding of the extension of the railway, so it's more likely an angry reaction from the government itself rather than the deep state. A study, KPMG, on 51 large companies in East Africa, including 19 in Kenya, suggested that 3/4 of the CEOs expect a maximum 2% revenue growth. Kwame Owino, the idea that the government has better use for our money than we do is just not acceptable. The Nairobi All shares down 7.86% year to date. The NEC 20 is down 20.02% year to date. There is indeed blood on the trading floors. This visual was posted by Ramanyan. The final link is if you want to check into any share price at the stock exchange, just click on that.